Look, if you've been paying even the slightest bit of attention to world news lately, and let's be honest, that's a big ask when there's an endless stream of cat videos to watch, you might have noticed that the relationship between the United States and China is a little frosty. And by frosty, I mean it's currently resembling an eerie hotel showdown, but with more tariffs and fewer creepy twins. The tensions between these two global behemoths aren't just simmering anymore. They're boiling over on multiple fronts, creating a geopolitical drama that affects everything from the phone in your pocket to the people studying on your local college campus. It's a complex, sprawling mess, and it's happening right now. The current conflict is being fought not with tanks and soldiers, but across three very modern, interconnected battlegrounds. First, the academic front, where the flow of students has become a national security flashpoint. Then, the economic arena, a long-running trade spat that's become a full-blown tariff war. Let's start with the students, because nothing says welcoming global partner quite like detaining scholars at the border, shipping them back home. Earlier this year, the Trump administration launched a full-scale crackdown on Chinese students in the US in a move described as aggressively unsubtle. Citing national security risks, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced aggressive visa revocations. This wasn't just tough talk, it became policy, sending a shockwave through campuses, leaving thousands in legal limbo and profound uncertainty. The numbers here are staggering. As of April 16, 2025, at least 1,300 students, recent graduates from over 200 American institutions, had their status abruptly changed. The University of California, San Diego confirmed 35 students had F1 visas revoked. For many, this was a life-altering event. One student likely came for academic dreams. To understand why this crackdown is such a big deal, you have to grasp just how deeply intertwined Chinese students are with the American higher education system. During the 2023-24 academic year, students from China made up about a quarter of all foreign students in the United States. That's more than 270,000 people. They aren't just a rounding error. They are a massive, integral part of the academic and financial ecosystem of American universities. They fill lecture halls, contribute to groundbreaking research, and perhaps most importantly to university administrators, they often pay full tuition, effectively subsidizing the education of domestic students. They are, in many ways, the financial bedrock of higher education in the US. This is precisely why the sudden hostility towards them has created such a political firestorm, even within the Republican Party. In a surprising twist, former President Donald Trump himself has become an unlikely defender of keeping Chinese students in the country. In a statement that caused considerable backlash among his own MAGA base, Trump bluntly told reporters, "I like that their students come here. And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our system would go to hell immediately." He argued that without the roughly 600,000 international students, a number he used to emphasize their importance, many American colleges would simply collapse. It's a rare moment of Trump defending a key aspect of globalization, presumably because someone showed him the balance sheets. If the student situation is a slow-burn crisis, the US-China trade war is a series of massive, spectacular explosions. After years of skirmishes, the conflict escalated dramatically earlier this year, when the Trump administration cranked up the pressure to an almost absurd degree. The US raised tariffs on a range of Chinese goods to a staggering 145%. When added to existing duties, some products faced a cumulative tariff of 245%. To put that in perspective, that's like buying a $20 gadget from China and having to pay an extra $49 in taxes at the border. It's less a trade policy and more a declaration of economic warfare. Naturally, China didn't just sit back and take it. In a classic tit-for-tat response, Beijing retaliated with tariffs up to 125% on American goods. This move created a vicious cycle of escalation, where each side tried to outdo the other in a contest of economic self-harm. American farmers, car manufacturers, tech companies found their products priced out of the massive Chinese market. American consumers started seeing the costs of everything from electronics to furniture begin to climb. It was a lose-lose scenario, with businesses and consumers in both countries caught in the crossfire. Then, just as it seemed the two economies were on a collision course, a temporary truce was called. Following 2 days of intense negotiations in Geneva, a surprising agreement was reached on May 12, 2025. Both sides agreed to slash their tariffs by 115 percentage points for a 90-day period. For years, the US tech industry has operated with a certain swagger, confident in its position at the top of the global food chain, especially in the cutting-edge field of artificial intelligence. Then, on January 20th, 2025, the very same day President Trump was inaugurated for his second term, a Chinese company called DeepSeek dropped a bomb. They released their new AI model, R1. It wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. Overnight, DeepSeek cemented itself as China's premier AI research lab, forced the entire world to reassess the balance of technological power. It was the AI equivalent of the Sputnik moment. The race was no longer a one-horse affair. The impact was immediate and undeniable. 1 week after release, DeepSeek's iPhone app rocketed past OpenAI's ChatGPT to become the most downloaded free app on the US App Store. A Chinese-made app launched amid geopolitical hostility became the most popular app in America. A stunning demonstration of technological prowess and market appeal. For American tech giants, this was more than a new competitor, it was an existential threat. The news sent shivers through Wall Street. Stock prices of major US tech companies tumbled. So how did DeepSeek pull this off? How did a Chinese company operate under United States export controls? How did it build an AI that could go toe-to-toe with the best of Silicon Valley? The official story is one of pure, unadulterated innovation. United States sanctions were designed to cripple China's AI ambitions by cutting off access to high-end chips. But the sanctions may have had the opposite effect, forcing Chinese engineers to get creative. However, a darker, more cynical explanation has started to circulate. In February 2025, United States officials launched an investigation. The probe asked whether DeepSeek bypassed export controls by acquiring NVIDIA semiconductors through intermediaries. One country named in reports was Singapore. Flowchart: NVIDIA chips routed from the US, Singapore, DeepSeek in China. The idea: direct sales to China were blocked. But the chips could have been rerouted through third-party countries. A global shell game. That would mean, instead of innovating around the problem, DeepSeek may have found a backdoor for hardware. Suspicion was fueled by a bombshell report from semiconductor research firm SemiAnalysis. The report, published on January 31st, contained a comparative analysis. It compared DeepSeek's model to a leading US model, Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Based on public data, training Anthropic's model cost tens of millions of dollars. Regardless of whether DeepSeek smuggled in chips, there's a compelling argument that US export controls actually accelerated China's AI progress. For years, American AI labs, OpenAI, Google, followed a simple rule: bigger is better. They had near-endless access to the world's most powerful chips, so they just threw more hardware at the problem. They brute-forced performance, building ever-larger data centers stacked with tens of thousands of GPUs. Chinese companies faced scarcity due to US sanctions, so they couldn't play the same game. They stopped chasing hardware, and instead built new software and algorithmic techniques to train models more efficiently. They created novel architectures, more sophisticated training algorithms, new data processing methods, achieving top-tier performance without massive chip arsenals. Necessity driving invention. The export controls were meant to be a knockout blow, but they may have been a catalyst instead. The escalating tensions with China have not exactly united the political establishment in Washington. In fact, they've exposed deep divisions and contradictions within the United States government, creating a confusing and often self-defeating policy landscape. You have a situation where different factions are pulling in completely opposite directions, all under the banner of getting tough on China. It's kind of like a group of people trying to build a car, where one team is installing the engine, another is putting the wheels on backward, and a third is convinced the whole thing should be a boat. The result is a policy apparatus that is often at war with itself. The most glaring example of this is the debate over Chinese students. On one side, you have the national security hardliners, led by figures like Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They see the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students in the United States as a massive security risk, a fifth column that needs to be contained and monitored. On the other side, you have an unlikely coalition of university presidents, business leaders, and, bizarrely, Donald Trump. Trump's defense of keeping Chinese students puts him in direct opposition to the hawkish wing of his own party. So where does all this leave us? We're standing on the edge of a new era of great power competition, one defined not by ideology like the old Cold War, but by a raw, pragmatic struggle for economic dominance and technological dominance. For the United States, the challenge is to navigate this rivalry without sacrificing the principles of openness and global collaboration that have long been sources of its strength. It has to find a way to protect its national security without succumbing to paranoia and closing itself off from the world, a balancing act it's currently struggling to perform. For China, the path forward is equally fraught with challenges. It's shown its capacity for incredible innovation, but its rise is also fueling a global backlash. Its actions on the world stage, from aggressive trade practices to murky technological acquisitions, are creating suspicion and pushing other nations to align with the United States. The ripple effects of this rivalry extend far beyond Washington and Beijing. The globalized system of free trade and open exchange that defined the post-Cold War era is under threat, potentially fracturing into competing economic blocs and technological blocs. Alternatively, the temporary truce in the trade war could pave the way for a more stable, though still competitive, relationship, where both sides establish clear rules of engagement. The rise of DeepSeek could either fuel a dangerous, unregulated arms race in AI, or it could spur a global dialogue on AI safety and ethics. We are at a critical juncture, and the decisions made in the coming months and years will determine whether this new era of competition leads to mutual prosperity